Hello again. Now, President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa expected to make changes to the leadership of security agencies. A task team has called for cabinet accountability for the deadly July unrest. It claims the leaders failed to prevent or manage the violence. Ramaphosa says coming changes will strengthen the security cluster. Well, for some analysis on what was said by the president in his State of the Nation address last night, let's speak to Gareth Newham from the Institute for Security Studies. Gareth, good afternoon. Thank you very much for your time. Some people would say it's about blooming time that there's a shake-up in the security cluster.
Yes, indeed. In fact, as far back as 2012, when the National Development Plan was adopted by the government, one of its recommendations was in response to what it termed as a serial crisis of top management in the South African Police Service. So as far back as 2012, it was very clear to those who did any kind of analysis on what was happening in the SAPS that part of the problem, a big part of the problem, was this issue of instability at the very top. Too many people who were appointed for reasons other than their capabilities in policing, undermining the work of the many excellent generals and brigadiers that are in the top management. So already then, we knew there was a problem.
Yeah, and from what one gathers from what you've just said, and when listening to the president and just watching what has been happening since, for example, July last year, you get a sense it's really about leadership more than structure, or is it a combo?
It's a combination. I think what the July panel found was that there was really a serious problem of coordination, of trust, of communication at the leadership level, not only amongst ministers, but also between ministers and their operational support people, the people in charge of the departments that they run, such as the National Commissioner of Police, the head of intelligence, and so forth. But at the same time, the organization response, certainly when it comes to policing, was slow, was unable to be responsive, couldn't change its tack when it realized that it wasn't being effective. So that's a structural issue. So it's both a leadership and a structural issue. But in order to change the structure, you need to have a very good strategy, and you need to have very capable leaders who understand that there needs to be a change and have the expertise and knowledge to know how to change something as big and complex as, for example, the South African Police Service.
Yeah, I mean, we're listening to the president last night. I mean, he touched on an array of plans to improve, for example, crime fighting and make sure there's accountability in the security and law enforcement establishment, and also spoke about special units that could specifically be set up in terms of tackling extortion and things like special courts as well in terms of the state capture cases. For you, I mean, what should come first? I mean, not everything can be a priority, surely, Gareth?
Well, you know, a lot of these issues will be taken up by different departments. So, of course, establishing special court roles is a matter for the Department of Justice, the courts, and the National Prosecuting Authority. Issues to do with the leadership, that is something that really his office needs to take directly with his ministers, because for example, he is the person who appoints the National Commissioner of Police and the Minister of Police. So those two things can go on simultaneously, making sure that there's space for the private sector to support the NPA with Treasury. That is something that Treasury can do. So many of the examples of plans he has in place could actually take place at the same time, simultaneously. But I think some of them will take longer than others. And I think when it comes to the most necessary step to start a process of institutional reform that can improve policing, improve intelligence capabilities, that is the issue of leadership in these institutions. And that's something we need to see happening quite soon.
I mean, surely you wouldn't want to start improving and bolstering the police service with the current police commissioner, Ketas Tole, at the helm. I mean, he's under fire. His fitness to hold office has been questioned. He has written to the president a few months ago to explain why he should still keep his position. And, I mean, there's been all kinds and sorts of claims made against him and his leadership. I mean, if you were president, that's where you would begin, isn't it? Before you make any changes.
Yes, that's where you'd need to start, because the position of National Commissioner of the South African Police Service is an immensely powerful one. They really are responsible for how that organization performs, because they are the person who finally decides on the strategy, on the plans, and who gets appointed to what posts. So they really have the biggest influence of anybody in the South African Police Service on how that organization performs. And of course, since we've had both High Court judgments and Supreme Court of Appeal judgments calling into question his decision-making and his behavior in relation to the law, his position is actually untenable. And it will only weaken that overall management structure when people are not sure if he's coming or going. And of course, that leads to infighting and disintegration at the highest levels of the organization. So that needs to be addressed as a matter of urgency, and it should be a first step.
Yeah, Gareth, I guess you're right. As we conclude very briefly, it's not really a matter of what the president said, because from what I've read, some commentators like yourselves, the Institute of Security Studies, is that he said the right things, but now it's going to be a question of acting. What is he going to do and when he's going to move? Because some of these things need to be urgently addressed. They've been outstanding since 2012.
Yes, they have. But on the positive side, there are the right things to be said, and they are very concrete things. So it won't take long for us to either know they are happening or not happening. And that's what's good about what was said. In the past, I think there's been very little said about the police, other than we're going to hire more police officers, or we're going to set up a detective academy, and all these sort of ideas that were not necessarily showing that there was a recognition of the challenges facing the South African Police Service. But the July violence changed that. The panel report of experts into that violence and state response has really clearly articulated where the problems are. And he seems to have recognized that. He wasn't defensive about it. He mentioned this in his State of the Nation last night. And for the first time, we've started to see a sense that they recognize the challenges and put forward some very practical and measurable steps that need to be taken. So as you said, now it's for the implementation.
Okay, thank you very much, Gareth, as usual, for your insight.